Yes, Oblivion is back, and better than ever, coming in hot like Beyonce and looking so good you'd think it had been indirectly funded by the military-industrial complex. And many of the changes are immediately obvious as soon as you boot it up.
Is there a problem?
The Emperor now looks less like Rick Wakeman, the prog keyboardist, and more like Sandra, the woman who offered you mash or chips in the school canteen. Elves now all look like Juliette Lewis without exception.
What?
And in a move that has angered the perennially not mad, stat differences between genders are now determined by your character's cultural background, so you can choose not only the race of your character, but where they grew up, and your outward gender or body type is purely cosmetic, which I think is a nice bit of modernisation inspired by the likes of Mass Effect and Pillars of Eternity, and not the collapse of Western civilization, but maybe I'm naive. There are also, however, lots of subtle differences in the new version that might not be immediately obvious even to veteran players. Some of them probably aren't even intentional, so here's a bunch of things that Bethesda, for whatever reason, didn't tell you about in Oblivion Remastered. Oblivion's infamous minigames have been the cause of many a thrown controller over the years, and it's clear that the devs are aware of this. The Speechcraft minigame in particular has received a lot of attention, benefiting from a complete visual overhaul that now gives you a traffic light system for determining whether or not the person you're trying to ingratiate yourself to prefers jovial banter to coercion? Coercion, Jesus, that's dark.
You're revolting.
But the just as infamous lockpicking minigame appears at first glance to be exactly the same as before, mechanically and visually. However, there is now a knack to it that didn't exist before. Instead of flicking your pick upwards and trying to lock the pin quickly, hold it upwards and see how the pin behaves. If it's still showing a lot of spring, this tumbler isn't ready to tumble. So release it and try again. Eventually, when the pin stays up, lock it in place on the upward stroke of the pick, and voila! Picking locks in the early game is now a piece of pick if you know the tricks of the trade. Just like real lockpicking. Probably, I wouldn't know. You cannot go that way, turn back. Probably one of the most evocative lines of text in the entire Elder Scrolls series, because each game takes place in one small part of the wider continent of Tamriel, but usually contains tons of tantalising references to goings-on beyond the invisible border.
I came all the way from Valenwood for it.
And because Elder Scrolls is nothing if not all about its epic vistas, you can peek beyond the veil into these places and dream of what lays beyond. Much has been made of the fact that in the remaster you can now clearly see Skyrim's Throat of the World mountain from the top of Oblivion's map, as they are bordered by the Gerald Mountains, a gorgeous range of snowy peaks that crown the Imperial Province. You can climb these mountains in both games. Skyrim even offers a tantalising glimpse of the Imperial City if you get high enough. It's incredible that you can just about stand in roughly the same place in both games and get a panoramic view of both of their most iconic landmarks. I mean, kinda. I had to download a remove borders mod for Skyrim to get this footage. Being able to see Skyrim so vividly and clearly from Oblivion's map is a wonderful pang of nostalgia, but the most remarkable thing about it isn't that this was added in for the remaster, it's the fact that it wasn't. The Throat of the World mountain was actually visible from Cyrodiil all the way back in 2006. It's been in the lore since the very first game in 1994, and you could also see it from Daggerfall, the second game. And so this isn't a fluke or some random elevation that happens to look like Skyrim. It is Skyrim, a rough sketch thereof to be filled in 5 years later in the sequel, but it's 2025 now. A lot more people know to look for it since Skyrim became one of the best-selling games ever, about 6 times over. So it makes sense that the remastered version is purposefully more prominent, less obscured by fog, and accompanied by the Aurora Borealis, a genuine retcon from Skyrim, along with double-sided health bars, sprinting, and beards. More on them later. What's far less intentional but no less cool is the fact that there's now a gap in the invisible barrier between the Gold Coast region in western Cyrodiil and Valenwood, the home province of the Wood Elves or Bosmer. If you head to the river almost directly south of Kvatch, you'll be able to swim over the border and explore the entire and surprisingly detailed southwestern quadrant of Tamriel, including Elsewhere, the province of the Khajiit, and complete with a view of Somerset Isle, the homeland of the High Elves. And if you you've got the patience, you can actually loop around the border to visit Hammerfell, the rumoured setting of the Elder Scrolls 6, although at this stage who knows, it might as well be set on the moon frankly, given that we'll all be sheet glass by the time it comes out. And yes, fine, you can turn borders off in Oblivion.ini if you're on PC, but it's much more fun to find an anomaly in the base vanilla game than it is to just Poindexter your way around every obstacle, which leads me to... Shortly after the remaster's release, Bethesda published an FAQ stating that mods were not officially supported in Oblivion Remastered, which a lot of people took to mean that you can't mod it at all. And then a bunch of people released mods for it. Initially the usual stuff that barely counts as modding, like reshades and custom save files, but eventually people figured out that the original Elder Scrolls construction set that shipped with the old game can be used to modify the remaster as well. It's much more complicated now because the remaster is a blend of two game engines, the original Gamebryo handling logic and I don't know how many carrots you've stashed in a chest, and Unreal 5 handling graphics rendering, so people are still figuring out exactly how the new tech stack works, but that hasn't stopped the enterprising Elder Scrolls modding community releasing hundreds of additions and tweaks with varying levels of complexity. And yes, even though it is possible to mod the game, it's still the case that it isn't supported. As of right now, Bethesda hasn't released an updated construction set, and they're definitely not liable if you break your game by fiddling with it. But ultimately, you can do what you like, because despite the weird short stories you've been publishing on Archive of Our Own, Todd Howard is not your mum. Though the remaster has more or less preserved the content of the original game exactly as it was in the Game of the Year version, there are a couple of allusions to quests that were cut from the original game despite leaving some tantalising evidence of their existence, dangling threads at the player that could never be resolved. The first is the mystery of who or what the Black Queen is. In central Cyrodiil, between the Imperial City and Bruma, there is an unmarked cave. I mean, it's actually a marked cave that's marked on your map as the unmarked cave, so things are already looking a bit slapdash. In it, you'll find a largely empty space, some rats, nominal loot, and a locked door. Now, originally, it was impossible to open this door unless you had the PC version and could use console commands or install the unofficial Oblivion patch. Now it's just a simple, easy lock. You can pick it in the vanilla game, and it leads to, well, more large spaces with the odd loot chest and a bunch of angry dogs and rats. There is, frustratingly, no evidence to be found in what is called the Black Queen's Hall as to who or what that name refers to, but there is a stray bit of rumour dialogue in Cheydinhal that makes reference to a Red Queen.
De Vera Ramallan is sure proud of the Newlands Lodge. I think she's especially happy that the Red Queen drinks there.
Who has always been assumed to be related to the Black Queen quest in some way. Maybe the whole thing was going to be about a game of chess, who knows. It has been theorised that the Red Queen could have been a local arena champion at a time in development when all of Oblivion's cities were supposed to have arenas, and there would have been a number of different tournaments to fight your way through instead of just the arena quest in the Imperial City.
Did you know Kvatch had the only arena in Cyrodiil outside the Imperial City?
This was eventually cut right back, as we know, as there simply wasn't enough space on the standard DVD disc to fit all of the required dialogue. It's remarkable that technology has progressed to a point where a game that used to fit onto a standard 6.5GB DVD-ROM is now a 120GB download because they marshalled the power of Unreal 5 to make the Emperor look like Pete Postlethwaite.
Listen.
Another nod to quests unfinished is that the wayward priest Elav Dralgoner, who once had little more to offer than flavour text in the form of dialogue,
"Why have the gods forsaken us?"
is now involved in a quest as originally intended. Hell, he's now a quest giver no less, being one of the gear peddlers involved in the new deluxe edition content that comes with premium versions of the game and is, annoyingly, actually pretty decent. Elav here will send you to investigate disappearances at an Aelid ruin on the Gold Coast, and will eventually become your personal distributor of Akatosh-themed gear.
What do you want?
There is also a correspondingly evil quest and reward set of Mehrunes Dagon-themed gear.
Come, mortal. Our prince's power is close.
itself involving a fairly substantial investigation quest. On the one hand, it's profoundly irritating that the extra tenor for our first new Elder Scrolls quests in what feels like a billion years seems like a good deal to my brain because it's had to live through 2 recessions, COVID, and Liz Truss.
May the Sovereign of Destruction be with you.
On the other, the Deluxe Edition quest rewards actually scale with your character, and you can keep exchanging them for better versions as you level up, making them frankly 2 of the best gear sets in the entire game. So it's impossible to say if unchecked capitalism and dopamine inducement inspired by the gambling industry is bad or not. I can't overstate this. These guys pioneered cosmetic microtransactions in single-player games, and now they're trailblazing pay-to-win in single-player games. I mean, what are we doing here, guys? The last thing you'd expect from an Oblivion remaster is that they'd make the NPCs attractive, right? Back in the dim and distant days of 2 weeks ago, Tyler Wilde of PC Gamer, one of the half-dozen games websites not currently affiliated with IGN, worried that the then unannounced remaster might actually make Oblivion's classic potato-faced NPCs too realistic, and therefore sexy.
That's just a silly notion, of course.
Which is frankly the last thing you want. Real fans know that Oblivion is supposed to be a challenging wank, if anything.
What?
But sanity prevailed, and we were all ecstatic to discover that Oblivion's NPCs, while totally different looking now, were a whole new kind of weird. Folk cutting about with horrid, beady little eyes, elves with squashed little rat faces that looked like troll dolls, as if the brief said they were supposed to be ethereal and alien looking, and the designers took that to mean E.T. the extraterrestrial. But while the elves and most humans have survived the transition to next gen with their unsettling ugliness intact, there are a few exceptions. The beast races, the Khajiit and Argonians, are now genuinely incredible looking, more akin to their Skyrim and ESO equivalents and more beautifully beast-like than ever. And Baurus, your main contact in the Blades, one of the first people you ever speak to in the game, he's... well, look, in the original game he looks like he's about to give you free mortgage advice in your local branch of NatWest, but now, with that hair, that beard, those smouldering eyes, I feel like I'm being seduced by Donald Glover, and I'm entirely okay with it. Generally, the addition of facial hair is a real treat. In the original game, it just didn't exist apart from on the face of the mad god Sheogorath in the Shivering Isles DLC. And at the time, the forums were abuzz with wonder about it. How have they pulled this off, people asked. In Gamebryo! Well, unlike the baby-faced, clean-shaven population of the first game, Oblivion Remastered contains more beard than a dyslexic bakery. Hang on, I've got another one of these. Oblivion Remastered contains more beard than the campaign for Real Ale. Hang on, I've got another one. Oblivion Remastered contains more beard than ZZ Top, who only have 2 beards, but the drummer is called Frank Beard, which is surely some kind of multiplier. I've got another one. Oblivion Remastered features more beards than a Southern Baptist minister edition of Wife Swap. Oblivion Remastered contains more beard than me. Aside from the Horse Armor DLC that proved to be a canary in the coal mine for cosmetics in single-player games and led directly to the microtransaction hellscape we now live in, the original Oblivion had 9 downloadable add-ons of varying size and quality. From themed player houses and extended dungeons to full-blown expansions that significantly altered the base game and transported us to an entire new realm. The last DLC, Battlehorn Castle, released more than 18 months after the base game, along with the Game of the Year edition, which included every little morsel of Elder Scrolls 4 content, and in the 18 years since, that's the release which has been definitive. It's actually more difficult now to get a hold of the original DLC-less release than it is to buy the all-inclusive edition. The DLCs aren't really DLCs anymore, they're just part of Oblivion. I mean, they've been in Oblivion for 10 times as long as they weren't in it. And despite this, there have been a few lingering issues introduced by the DLCs that never got fixed until now. Mainly the fact that starting a new game in Old Oblivion would result in you getting a load of annoying quest pop-ups before you'd even left the sewers, like some sort of medieval work emails that you couldn't unsubscribe from. I'm ecstatic to note that this has been fixed. The add-on quests and player homes are now simply treated as part of the base game, and you now start them via the normal means, hearing about them in dialogue.
There were lights spotted at Sundercliff Watch. That place was cursed by Mehrunes Dagon himself.
Or simply stumbling upon them in the open world, and you can actually see the DLC locations at a distance now, which you couldn't in the original game. For example, the wizard stronghold of Frostcrag Tower is now visible right from the start of the game when you exit the sewers, poking out from the Gerol Mountains, forming a distinct part of Cyrodiil's skyline, as it should. My favourite example of this deep integration of all the DLCs though is that they fixed a bugbear of mine that's been annoying me and a lot of other people for the past 18 years. In the original game, the Knights of the Nine DLC adds a bunch of rumour dialogue to the mix that references the attack on the Chapel of Dibella in Anvil. For example,
Anvil is all in an uproar. First the chapel attacked, now the prophet ranting about the end of the world.
which is all well and good, but why is Lucian Lachance, the speaker of everyone's favourite goth assassin cult, reacting like a normie to some tragic murder of some priests? I mean, this guy listens to Judas Priest. If anything, he'd think it was rad and offer the perpetrator a job in his murder bureau. It's completely out of character for him to give a shit about the Vicar of Dibley getting shanked in the middle of a service. It's completely out of character for him to dabble in gossip of any kind, which is why his original rumour dialogue is...
Dear sister, I do not spread rumors. I create them.
I can't express how happy this made me to hear him say it again. This was such an annoying oversight, and I know it's a minor thing, but that original line is such an excellent piece of character building, and to have it overridden because Lachance happens to be flagged as an Imperial in the back end always felt like such a violation of one of the most memorable characters in the entire Elder Scrolls canon. And when you compare this fix to oversights they've deliberately left unfixed, like the infamous and heavily memed line flub that the new game preserves and even fully lip syncs,
Wait a minute, let me do that one again.
tells us something about the developers of this remaster. It tells us that they actually do love Oblivion and tried very hard not to erase its soul. I did a video recently where I lamented that the remaster was probably going to be done without any nuance or subtlety, or real regard for the nonsense fever dream that the original game is. The prospect of a revamped Oblivion leaves me a bit cold, because you can't fix it without killing it. And I'm actually really pleased to sit here and say, turns out I was full of shit. Anyway, the point stands, they should still do Morrowind.